appointed the office of rulers and parliaments for the welfare of society and the just government of men and women, we beseech you to behold with your abundant favor us, your servants, whom you have called to the performance of important trust in these islands. Father, let your blessing descend upon us here assembled, and grant that we may treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to promote your honor and glory, and to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of these islands and of those whose interest you have committed to our charge. And this we beg in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. May the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all evermore. Amen. Please be seated. Item number 2 on our orders is confirmation of minutes. Senator Kieran Bell.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the consideration of the minutes of the meeting of Wednesday, the 25th of September, 2024 be deferred.
Thank you. Is there any objection to that motion? No objection. The minutes will be deferred. Thank you, Vice President Kieran Bell. Messages, Mrs. Beal?
There are no messages, Madam President.
Thank you. Reports of committees? There are none. Announcements? I just have one announcement, and that is that we have received apologies from Senator DeCuto, who's abroad, and John White. The other announcements in the name of, the first one is in the name of Senator Ariana Hudson, the spokesperson for finance.
Good morning, Madam President.
Good morning.
Good morning, colleagues. Madam President, I hereby present for the information of Senate the Premier's EU visit report for the September 5th through the 11th, 2024.
Thank you. And the second announcement is in the name of Minister Senator the Honorable Owen Darrell, spokesperson for the Cabinet Office.
Thank you, Madam President. I hereby present for the information of Senate the annual report of the Office of the Project Management and Procurement for year ended December 31st, 2023. Senators may access copies of the report on their tablet or the parliamentary website.
Thank you, Minister. The second notice of motion is in the name of the Junior Minister for Health, Senator Ariana Hudson. Senator Hudson. That's the motion.
The lease agreement.
Oh, I beg your pardon. I've passed the lease agreement of Seagrass Services Limited, I beg your pardon, and that's in the name of Senator Leslie Robinson, the Junior Minister for Public Works.
Thank you, Madam President. I hereby present for the consideration of Senate the draft lease agreement between the Bermuda Land Management Corporation and Seagrass Services Limited. Reference area land comprising 5.9 acres located at Burrows Hill, South Side Road between Stocks Road and Hull Street. St. George's DD03 shown edge yellow on the annex photographic plan and as described in Schedule 1 attached to the lease. And I will give notice that at a later point in the meeting, I will move that the said draft lease agreement be approved.
Thank you, Senator Robinson. And so the next notice of motion is in the name of Senator Ariana Hudson.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move that Standing Order 71-2 be suspended so that Senate may now proceed with consideration of the National Pension Scheme, First-Time Homeowner Refund Regulations 2024.
I gave you notices of motion and consideration.
All right.
Madam President, I hereby present for the consideration of Senate the draft regulations entitled the National Pension Scheme First-Time Homeowner Refund Regulations 2024, proposed to be made by the Minister of Finance in exercise of the power conferred by Sections 24(9)(f) and 69 of the National Pension Scheme Occupational Pensions Act 1998. And I give notice that at a later point in the meeting, I will move that the said draft regulations be approved.
So she will do that now.
Madam President, I hereby present for the consideration of Senate the draft regulations entitled the Bermuda Health Council High Risk Health Technology Regulations 2024, proposed to be made by the Minister responsible for health after consultation with the Council in exercise of the power conferred by Section 16D of the Bermuda Health Council Act 2004. And I give notice that at a later point in the meeting, I will move that the said draft regulations be approved.
Thank you. And you
Madam
have the final.
President, yes. Lastly, I hereby present for the consideration of Senate the draft regulations entitled the Bermuda Health Council Health Service Providers Licensing Regulations 2024, proposed to be made by the Minister responsible for health after consultation with the Council in exercise of the power conferred by Section 15 of the Bermuda Health Council Act 2004. And I give notice that at a later point in the meeting, I will move that the said draft regulations be approved.
Thank you, Senator Hudson. Item number 7 on our orders of the day, petitions, there are none. Item number 8, the statements. We have 3 statements, and the first is in the name of the Minister, Honorable Owen Darrell, the Minister of Tourism, Culture, and Sport. Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, it is my absolute pleasure to speak to you today about a showcase of one of Bermuda's most vibrant and dynamic aspects of our cultural heritage, the Bermuda Gombe Festival Weekend, hosted by the Department of Culture. On Saturday, October 26th, we will gather at the Bermuda Botanical Gardens to enjoy one of my favorite events of the cultural calendar. Madam President, the Gombe Festival is more than just a performance. It's a living tradition that embodies the spirit, history, and community of Bermuda. For generations, the Gombe has been a symbol of resilience, joy, and cultural expression, rooted in a blend of African, Caribbean, and indigenous influences that has become uniquely Bermudian manifestation of our cultural heritage. The Bermuda Gombe Festival Weekend is our chance to celebrate this heritage in all its vibrancy and color. Madam President, the main event will feature the artistry of not just one, but 7 active Gombe troops. We are thrilled to welcome Gombe Evolution, Gombe Warriors, H&H Gombes, Places Gombes, and the Wart Gombe Troop. Additionally, we are excited to introduce 2 new participants who will be joining the festival for the very first time, Phoenix Gombes and Vibe Tribe Gombes. The diversity of styles and expressions within these groups is a testament to the dynamic and evolving nature of our Gombe tradition. Each troop brings its unique flavor and flair to the performance, showcasing how the art of the Gombes continue to grow. Madam President, in addition to the performances, the showcases will feature a variety of local vendors offering an assortment of goods that presents a perfect opportunity to support our local businesses. Madam President, I want to emphasize that this is a free event, including a free fun castle for the little ones to jump, play, and revel in the festive atmosphere. This festival is about community, it's about unity and joy, and we want everyone to have a chance to experience it. Madam President, while the main festival is Saturday, the Gombe Festival Weekend will be rounded out with a series of events to capture the spirit of Gombe unity. On Friday, October 25th, we will launch the Gombe Unity short film, an inspiring documentary directed by Keane Dickinson, produced by the department's cultural program manager, Carlita Lodge. This short film explores the theme of unity within the Gombe community, offering viewers a rare glimpse into the artistry, commitment, and sense of togetherness that fuels the Gombe tradition. The film will be made available on the department's YouTube channel, Bermuda Culture. Madam President, on Sunday, October 27th, we will wind down the weekend with a Chew Stick open mic jam session, sponsored by the Department of Culture. This session will be hosted by the Chew Stick Foundation and will provide a safe or a space for the Gombe community to connect behind the mask. It's an opportunity to share music, poetry, and creativity in a more intimate setting, fostering the bonds that make our cultural traditions strong. Madam President, this year the festival also includes the continuation of the Gombes in the Gardens community art program. a mural project in collaboration with the True Stick Foundation. This initiative is an extension of the Gombe Festival, creating a lasting visual tribute to the artistic spirit of the Gombe. Madam President, the Bermuda Gombe Festival weekend is a powerful reminder of the cultural richness that we hold in our hearts and history. The Gombe is more than just music and dance. It's an expression of freedom, identity, and community. It tells our stories of our ancestors and celebrates the spirit of our people, past, present, and future. Madam President, whether you are a longtime fan of the Gombes or a first-time attendee, we invite you to join us for the Bermuda Gombe Festival on October 26th. In the case of inclement weather, the showcase will take place on Sunday, October 27th. By coming together to support and enjoy this festival, we are honoring our heritage and nurturing a tradition that continues to inspire and unite us. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Minister Harold. The second statement is in the name of Senator Leslie Robinson, the Junior Minister for Public Works. Senator Robinson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, today I am happy to proudly demonstrate to the listening public this government's pledge to foster economic development and diversification in Bermuda. Today, I have tabled a motion for this chamber to approve the lease agreement between the Bermuda Land Management Corporation and Seagrass Services Limited, a local subsidiary of the multinational corporation Google LLC. Madam President, Senate colleagues may recall in September 2023, Google announced a commitment to invest in Bermuda by installing the NUVOM, a new transatlantic subsea cable system to connect Portugal, Bermuda, and the United States. It is intended that the NUVOM will improve network resiliency across the Atlantic, help meet the growing demand for digital services, and add international route diversity to support the development of information and communications technology (ICT) infrastructure for the continents and countries involved. Madam President, I'm proud to say that Bermuda will play an integral role by hosting a significant cable station to enable multi-cable landings. However, it is more than a cable landing just passing through the island. It will provide a backbone for a wider strategy of a digital port with all the requirements for supporting data and digital infrastructure. Madam President, in November 2023, by way of a letter of interest, Google indicated its desire to acquire property measuring a total area of 5.9 acres, originally owned by the government of Bermuda and leased to the former Bermuda Land Development Company Limited, BLDC, located at Burrows Hill between Stocks Road and Hull Street, Southside St. George's Parish. For clarity, this area is currently the remote control car track in St. David's. In November 2023, the then BLDC, the government, and Google began negotiations. Evaluation of the property was conducted by the Bermuda Realty Company Limited, which indicated that the likely market value of the freehold interest in the property was $4,650,000 or $825,000 per acre. After considerable due diligence, Madam President, and as a demonstration of good faith by all parties involved, an agreement in principle has been made for the site at Burrows Hill. Madam President, it has been agreed in principle that a lease of 262 years will be held between Seagrass Services Limited, a Google local subsidiary, and the newly established Bermuda Land Management Corporation, BLMC, for the sum of $4,876,500. 4,867,500. Senate colleagues are reminded that BLCM is a singular entity established resulting from the merging of the BLDC and the West End Development Corporation, WEDCO. Additionally, Madam President, after further negotiations with Google, BLMC management, and the tenants of the RC car track, as a result of the agreement, the current track location will be moved to another site. A planning application will soon be submitted for a new RC car track, and all works will be funded entirely by Google. Madam President, it is intended for this agreement to act as a magnet, drawing other players in the communication industry, whether for laying their own cables or leasing from Google. There have already been inquiries from other major companies into building data centers in Bermuda. The successful agreement for this lease will deliver on the government's economic development commitments outlined in its 2020 election manifesto, FinTech, and National Space Strategy by creating the infrastructure which supports a technology hub. Madam President, in addition to the land leasing and physical development of a large cable landing station, there are a number of other expected benefits to Bermuda with the landing of the Nuvon cable, including employment for positions needed on an ongoing basis for the cable landing station, creating the infrastructure which supports one, a technology hub for fintech, and two, increased satellite earth stations. Communication satellite earth stations are already either set up in Bermuda or showing increased interest in placing additional earth stations here. Increasing investment in renewable energy. The cable landing station will need between 600 kilowatts and 3 megawatts per annum of electricity over time as the cables ramp up, providing access to Google's significant resource and support, including A, training opportunities to Bermudians by giving them access to Google's training platform, B, providing support and advice for other sustainability projects and marine related initiatives, including providing technology for monitoring and enforcement, and C, supporting Bermuda's education initiatives and community development opportunities. I would like to thank all parties involved for making this happen. In particular, the Honorable David A. Birch, Minister of Public Works, the Honorable Walter H. Raban, Minister of Home Affairs, Ms. Razia Azar, the former Permanent Secretary for the Ministry of Home Affairs, Solicitor General Mrs. Shakira Del Francos, and Senior Crown Counsel Specialist Ms. Chantel Bailey of the Attorney General's Chambers, Mr. Andrew Diaz, the CEO of the Bermuda Land Management Corporation, the board of the Bermuda Land Management Corporation, the board of the former Bermuda Land Development Company, Mr. Jerome Wilson, partner and head of technology and innovation, and Mr. Neil Molyneux, senior associate property team and Appleby Global Services, and Ms. Fiona Back, formerly the Bermuda Business Development Agency and now a consultant with Google, all of whom were instrumental in bringing this matter to its conclusion. We are most appreciative of their efforts. Madam President, this agreement demonstrates Bermuda's vitality for innovation and importance on a global scale. As I've stated before, it is intended for this agreement to act as a magnet, drawing other players in the communication industry to Bermuda. I am pleased to say that this is precisely the scenario envisioned when the Submarine Communication Cables Act 2020 was developed under the Ministry of Home Affairs and approved by this chamber. Bermuda has a well-established reputation for creating such regulatory policy, and this serves as yet another example of our forward-thinking approach. Madam President, we hope that this agreement sets the foundation for even bigger and better things to come. We welcome Google's proposed investment in Bermuda and look forward to a long and productive relationship with them. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Leslie Robinson. I believe you have a second statement. Proceed when you're ready.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Madam President, and this statement is the establishment of the Bermuda Land Management Corporation. Today, I'm happy to announce the official establishment of the Bermuda Land Management Corporation. Madam President, in July 2002, the then cabinet decided that the Central Policy Unit should complete a review of 17 Quangos, which focused on the following objectives. Number one, determine whether Bermuda's Quangos, as currently constructed, are meeting government's aims, and if not, recommend methods of achieving alignment. Number two, determine whether there is accountability to the government, and if not, recommend an adequate structure to accomplish this. And three, develop mechanisms for ongoing review. Madam President, the scope of the review covered a wide range of topics, including the establishment and governance of each body, its existing relevance, feasibility, effectiveness, levels of accountability to government, expenditure, income, whether the work could be more effectively or more efficiently carried out within government proper or by some other means, determine governance and best practice in other jurisdictions, and to develop a mechanism for ongoing review. All laudable goals, which resulted in a report entitled Untangling Bermuda's Quangos, a review of Quangos in the Bermuda government, presented in October 2003. Madam President, next month will mark 21 years since the original recommendation to merge Quangos that share similar objectives, mandates, skills, accounting procedures, and staffing levels. And I am proud to say that this government has accomplished that goal. Madam President, earlier this year, this chamber, through the West End Development Corporation Amendment Act 2024, approved the merging of the two government Quangos, the West End Development Corporation, WEDCO, and the Bermuda Land Development Company Limited, BLDC, to create the Bermuda Land Management Corporation, the BLMC. The goal of this initiative was to reduce the overall cost to the government, facilitate better coordination when addressing issues, and bring a sharper focus to achieving national aims. Madam President, on September 1st, 2024, the BLMC began its operations, and I am happy to report that there were no redundancies resulting from this merger. There were no redundancies resulting from this merger. While it is true that the BLMC is seeing minimal duplication of rules, but note that reductions will occur over time through the natural attrition through retirement. The reasoning behind this direction is the benefit of ensuring that any important institutional knowledge is retained into future operations while avoiding severances. I must again commend the management and staff of both former organizations, many of whom did not believe we would proceed and that their jobs would be in jeopardy if we did. I'm particularly pleased to again thank both the Bermuda Industrial Union and the Bermuda Public Services Union for collaborating with us to revise the collective bargaining agreements so that they were ready for the Bermuda Land Management Company. Madam President, since commencement of the West End Development Corporation Amendment Act 2024, the BLDC has now officially ceased its operations, with the company's wind-up process being completed fully by the end of fiscal year in March 2025. Madam President, the former BLDC head office at Triton House has now been closed, and a new BLMC sub-office has been opened at Commercial Park 5 Wallace Point Road, St. George's, a consolidation of offices and workshops of the former BLDC. This now provides the ability for the BLMC to lease the former BLDC headquarters to provide companies for additional rental income and to encourage economic development in the area, a topic I will soon speak on another statement. Regarding the headquarters for the BLMC, the head office is in Dockyard in the Clock Tower building, which houses the accounts department for both former entities. The CEO, Business Development Department, and HR share their time both in the East and West as demand requires. Moving forward, Madam President, over the next few weeks and months, the general public will start to see the transitioning of physical things like signage, vehicle logos, email addresses, and the website to reflect the new BLMC. Madam President, there are many positive endeavors on the horizon for the BLMC, and the government looks forward to Chairman MP Tyrrell, the board, Mr. Diaz, and his team continuing its commitments to manage and develop this entity to progressively improve the social and economic success of the company. Thank you, Madam President.
And thank you, Senator Leslie Robinson, Junior Minister for Public Works. Moving on with our agenda, item number 9, introduction of bills. There are none. Item number 10, the first reading of public bills. The following public bills have been received from the Honorable House of Assembly and are now read for the first time. Their titles are respectively the National Pension Scheme Occupational Pensions Amendment Act 2024, Tax Reform Commission, the Dissolution, Appointment and Validation Act 2024, the Companies and Limited Liability Company Amendment Act 2024, Restaurants Temporary Customs Duty Relief Amendment Act 2024, Hotels Temporary Customs Duty Relief Amendment Act 2024, the Electricity Amendment Act 2024, the Health Insurance Health System Strengthening Fund Amendment Act 2024, and the Bermuda Health Council Amendment Number 2 Act 2024. Item number 11, the first reading of private bills. There are none. Item number 12, question and question period on the statements that were read. And at this point, Senators, I would like to acknowledge and thank Mr. Stephen Seymour, the policy analyst for Public Works, who's with us this morning in the chamber. Welcome to you, sir. So the questions then will be on the first statement that was read by Minister Darrow, and that is the one on the Gombe Festival Weekend 2024. Would any senator care to ask questions on this statement? Senator Robin Tucker, opposition leader in the center, you have the floor.
Good morning, Madam President, and to my Senate colleagues. I just have a very general question. I would just like to, well, first of all, can I just make a comment that, I mean, Gumbes are a revered group in this island. There is lots and lots of support for them. So having, this festival weekend that has been operational now for a little while is a good thing. And I would just ask if the minister can just tell us what time the documentary will be showing, like when it would make its first showing on YouTube, and I believe on the department's YouTube channel, and also what time is the actual festival starting. So that's my questions. Thank you, Madam President.
You. Would any other senator care to ask questions on this statement? Hearing none, then it's over to you, Minister.
Thank you. Madam President, with the opposition Senate leader asking what time it will begin, I am happy and excited to see that maybe her and her entire group of colleagues will attend the Gombe Festival this year. That would be nice to have so many people in attendance. I know in the past there have been a few that have attended, but and especially the OBA Senate leader. But I'm glad. I'm excited to see. As we talk more about the Gombe Festival and how amazing it is, and how unfortunate it is that we couldn't have it last year before because of weather. I am seeking confirmation on the start time. And as soon as I get that, I will let the One Bermuda Alliance Senate leader know. Madam President, I will ask that you go into the next questions, and I will have this
That's
question
fine.
in the
Thank you,
next 2
Minister. I will
minutes.
do so. We will address the second statement that was given by the Junior Minister of Public Works. And would any senator care to ask questions on the lease between the Bermuda Land Management Corporation? Senator Tucker again? Yes, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to know, I may not be able to ask this question, but I would like to know if I can ask a question about the lease agreement itself. There were just two general things when I read through the lease agreement, and I just wanted to know if I can ask the question.
You may ask the question. I'm the
Don't know if I can
Junior
answer.
Minister may decide whether or not she will answer.
Okay, that's fair. Thank you, Madam President. So my first question, and again, these are just two general questions. One, I just wanted to know if it was standard to award rights to things that were sort of discovered underground, such as the mines, minerals, and mineral substances. So if something's discovered, um, as it relates to Google being on that particular land, will Bermuda lose out on it? So that was like the one general question. And then the second general question was, and I may have missed it, but I just wanted to know, because there didn't seem to appear to be firm agreement ensuring that the property would be returned in good order at the expiry of the lease. And I recognize that none of us will be here. This is 262 years away. But I just wanted to raise that because, I just want to make sure that we're not going to be leaving future generations, sort of exposed. So those were just the two general questions I had. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Would any other senator care to ask questions? Yes, Senator Robinson will ask questions to Senator Leslie Robinson. So,
Yes, thank you, thank you,
Dwayne Robinson, you have the floor.
thank you, Madam President. Just right off the bat, I want to let the chamber know I will be attending the Gombe Festival. My invite says it starts at 5 p.m.
5 p.m. There you go. Thank you. You beat me to it. Well done.
So, I said, um, just and on to the statement. I just wanted to get a bit of clarity around. It was speaking to a wider strategy of a digital port, and I just wanted to know whether Google had made that declaration to government, or is this a government initiative to grow this partnership? So I just want to know if we're initiating that, or has that already been set in stone? And I just wanted to know if the junior minister would be able to show any more tangible things coming out of this for the community of St. David specifically, besides the relocation of the race car track. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Robinson. Would any other senator care to ask questions of this statement? Hearing none, then we will await a response. Senator Leslie Robinson, Junior Minister. Works.
Madam President,
Senator Robinson.
yes, I do have some answers. The first one, if is it standard towards rights, uh, and it is standard for a lease of this nature. The second question about the property will be different as there are no buildings. The building is being constructed by Google, fully funded by them. Did Google initiate, as far as the wider growth strategy? Yes, Google initiated it.
Madam President, may I
Senator
ask
Robinson.
one last question?
You may.
Thank you to the Junior Minister. I just had one last question, and that is, are the government sort of aware of how many posts may be initially projected? I appreciate that, the ink is not even hit the paper yet, but I just wondered in terms of, employment, if there were any sort of discussions around initial projections of jobs that would be available at some point. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Tucker.
Regarding employment, no, not at this time. Just per as I said in the statement. Madam President, I think I've answered the questions. I know that Senator Robinson did mention about St. David's, but I think at this point in time, the fact that we're still retaining the track there, I think that is something very tangible for St. David's.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Robinson. Then moving on, senators, to the second question from Junior Minister Leslie Robinson, and this is on the establishment of the Bermuda Land Management Corporation. Does any senator have questions on this statement? Senator Tucker, opposition leader, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I just have one question at this time, and I'd just like to know if there's an anticipated time frame that is in mind to have all the duplicated positions eliminated. So, are they working toward a particular goal? I understand that attrition and all of that is at play. But I just wondered, do they anticipate that all the positions will be streamlined singularly as is needed in a year, 2 years, 5 years? Like, what would be the target time frame? Thank you, Madam President.
Madam President,
Senator Robinson.
the anticipated time frame is based on retirement, and that's pretty much mentioned in the statement as far as attrition.
Thank you, Senator Robinson. Senator Tucker, you have an additional question?
Just a supplementary, Madam President. I would anticipate, as one that works in HR, I would anticipate that that it is known persons will be retiring, or at least some idea. So that's really why I'm asking the question as to what the anticipated time frame might be. So is it possible that we could end up with these duplicated positions for 5 years down the road? Just a ballpark, some idea of what we're looking at in terms of the duplicated positions. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Tucker.
Madam President, there is a strategy to review rules as people retire. Therefore, some positions may change.
Thank you, Senator Robinson. That being the last questions, then we will thank you, senators, for your questions, and thanks, Senator Robinson,
Thank
for
you.
responding. We will now move on with our agenda. And senators, I would just like to take time. As you well know, we have at least 12 items on our orders of the day. And I would like to advise you that the order in which we will deal with them, I would just like to read out. So, item number 1 will be number 9, the second reading of the Health Insurance Health System Strengthening Fund Amendment Act. The second order of the day will be number 10, the second reading of the Bermuda Health Council Amendment Number 2 Act 2024. The third one will be consideration of the Bermuda Health Council Health Service Provider Licensing Regulation. Number 4, which we will take up, is order number 12, consideration of the Bermuda Health Council High Risk Health Technology. And number 5 we will take up is the second reading of the Companies and Limited Liability Company Amendment Act 2024. And item number 6 will be the second reading of the Restaurants Temporary Customs Duty Relief Amendment Act 2024. And item number 7 will be the second reading of the Hotels Temporary Customs Duty Relief Amendment Act 2024. So with that in mind, now we will now move on to our orders of the day, and we will take up number 1, which is number 9 on our agenda, the second reading of the Health Insurance Health System Strengthening Fund Amendment Act 2024, and that is in the name of Senator Ariana Hudson, the Junior Minister for Health. Senator Hudson, you will start when you are ready.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to begin by actually moving that the provisions of Standing Order 25 be granted so that the Senate may proceed with the second reading of the bills entitled the Health Insurance Health System Strengthening Fund Amendment Act 2024, the Bermuda Health Council Amendment Number 2 Act 2024, the Companies and Limited Liability Company Amendment Act 2024, the Restaurants Temporary Customs Duty Relief Amendment Act 2024, the Hotels Temporary Customs Duty Relief Amendment Act 2024, and finally, the National Pension Scheme Occupational Pensions Amendment Act 2024.
Is there any objection to that motion, that we take them up in that order? No.
Thank you, Madam
Thank
President.
you.
Madam President, I move that the bill entitled the Health Insurance Health System Strengthening Fund Amendment Act 2024 be now read a second time.
Is there any objection to the second reading? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, today I'm pleased to present the bill entitled the Health Insurance Health System Strengthening Fund Amendment Act 2024. Madam President, the Bermuda Health Strategy 2022-2027 outlines that health system strengthening is needed in Bermuda to address the challenges of high costs and inequitable access to quality care. The strategy emphasizes the need to improve the health system's efficiency and sustainability, especially considering our aging population and the high prevalence of chronic non-communicable diseases like diabetes. Though there are 8 strategic principles contained in the Bermuda Health Strategy 2022-2027, the following themes, particularly related to health system strengthening, are also featured. Providing access to healthcare coverage to ensure there is equitable access to essential, affordable, and high-quality physical and mental health services for all residents. Strengthening the healthcare workforce, improving governance, accountability, and coordination across the health workforce, as well as addressing workforce planning needs. And harnessing healthcare technology, leveraging digital health solutions to improve access to care, along with improved communication and data utilization. Madam President, the Bermuda Health Strategy is in harmony with international standards and that quality is paramount for health services to be effective. It echoes the World Health Organization's health system strengthening framework, emphasizing the need for services to be safe, effective, timely, efficient, equitable, and people centered. The strategy's focus on equitable access and effective coverage is aligned with global commitments like the Sustainable Development Goals. Madam President, members will be aware that in accordance with the Health Insurance Act 1970, Section 40, the Minister of Health prescribes the amount of the standard premium payable in respect of the standard health benefit and mutual reinsurance fund. The standard health benefit and mutual reinsurance fund jointly comprise the standard premium rate, or the SPR, and they are the essential components of an insurance package that all employers must provide and all insurers must include in any policy. When the need to make a change in the SPR is determined, the Bermuda Health Council presents to the Ministry of Health an analysis of SHB and MRF expenditure and utilization trends supported by consultant actuaries. Actuaries advise the Ministry of Health that to keep up with the Health Insurance Fund claims and to provide increased funding for the Bermuda Hospitals Board, the government would need to increase the SPR for financial year 2024-2025. However, this would have in turn increased health insurance rate by at least $45 per month for all persons with health insurance in Bermuda. As members would be aware, the government is committed to shielding residents and employers from a government-mandated premium increase in fiscal year 2024-2025 by freezing the SPR for the third year in a row. To provide this protection and to safeguard affordability and access to quality health care for all, it is proposed that $30 million will be transferred from the excess borrowing fund to the MRF. Of the total amount, $17 million will be allocated to the Bermuda Hospital Board, $12 million will be allocated to the Health Insurance Department, and $1 million will be allocated to establish the Health System Strengthening Fund. Madam President, the BHB allocation will be used to offset some of the financial pressures of the board by facilitating repayments of the current overdraft and to fund critical capital projects. The HID allocation will be used to defray the increase in claims expenses and to create a margin of protection against claims overruns or unexpected costly cases that may involve overseas medical treatment. The HID allocated funds will also allow for an increase in the personal home care benefit rate from $15 per hour to $16.40 per hour. As expected, this adjustment aligns with legislated minimum wage standards and aims to alleviate any increased financial burden on HIP and future care participants and their families. Finally, the HID's allocation will enable the maintenance of affordable premium rates for seniors and other vulnerable groups enrolled in future care and HIP. The Health System Strengthening Fund will be used to develop the core benefits package, validate financial analysis and modeling, develop national health system metrics, continue the development of integrated care pathways, plan the next steps for digitizing the health system, and developing a healthcare workforce strategy. These activities will require the engagement of technical experts, the convening of stakeholder consultations, and the implementation of the recommendations of existing strategies, such as the National Digital Health Strategy, in order to strengthen our health system. The impetus of these efforts is to immediately protect the most vulnerable in our population from the rising costs of care, while simultaneously working to improve the quality of service delivery, bolster the health workforce, create technological solutions for data-driven decision-making, and establish sustainable health financing mechanisms. These are the building blocks that are needed to strengthen Bermuda's health system and to improve both equity and access to health care for our most vulnerable. Madam President, it's often said that we can liken the healthcare system to the human body. When the body is unhealthy, it's often a sign of an imbalance or dysfunction within one or more systems. Similarly, issues like high costs, inequitable access, or inefficient service delivery in the healthcare system indicate that we have underlying systemic problems. Health system strengthening aims to go beyond treating symptoms to strengthen the entire system, prevent future problems, and promote overall well-being. Enhancing communication and data sharing between different healthcare providers is like improving the nervous system's ability to transmit signals effectively, leading to better coordination and faster responses. Investing in training and development for healthcare professionals is like strengthening the muscles and bones of the body, enabling it to perform tasks more efficiently and effectively. Implementing digital health solutions can be compared to improving the circulatory system, ensuring that vital information and resources flow smoothly throughout the healthcare body. A core benefits package acts as a fundamental safeguard for the health of the population, much like a balanced diet is crucial for the well being of the human body. This foundational work ensures that everyone has access to the basic nutrients or healthcare services that they need to thrive, contributing to a healthier and more resilient healthcare system overall. These benefits provide a strong base for population health, enabling preventative care and early intervention to reduce the burden of chronic illnesses. Madam President, to mobilize the aforementioned funds, the Ministry of Health now seeks to amend the Health Insurance Act 1970 to include a health system strengthening fund into which monthly payments from the mutual reinsurance funds will be made between October 2024 and March 2025. A prescribed sum order has been created that will add the Health System Strengthening Fund as a separate managed fund. Madam President, the Health Insurance Committee, established under the Act, will be responsible for the management and constant review of the new fund in accordance with their statutory mandate in Section 11CE. Madam President, this government is committed to making every effort to strengthen our healthcare system by addressing health inequities and improving the affordability of core healthcare services for all based on the health needs of our population. A healthy population has positive implications for workforce productivity, the building of healthier communities, and the social and economic vibrance of Bermuda overall. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Hudson. Would any senator care to speak on this bill? Senator Tucker, opposition leader in the Senate, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I mean, as we all know, healthcare and healthcare is a complex. It's a big beast, and it's very complex. We all know that healthcare in Bermuda is in a state of flux, and then and there is a need to establish a there is a critical need to establish a healthcare system that works for everybody, right? So I appreciate what this bill is trying to do. But I will say, Madam President, I do have a couple of questions, and so I'm just looking for a little bit of clarity. And I would say to the junior minister, sorry, I would like to just mention that again, healthcare is very complex, so I do need some clarity around this. Um, so the junior minister mentioned that $30 million is going to be transferred from the excess borrowing fund to the sinking fund, right? And it's going into the MRF and part of those funds are going to help to start this health strengthening fund. I would like to put that to one side for a second because I do want to balance that with something else. And that something else comes from the budget statement from 2024. And Madam President, if I may, can I just read a little bit of the excerpt from that?
Yes, you may.
Okay, thank you. So from that says we intend to transfer $30 million from the excess borrowing fund to the mutual reinsurance fund to ensure that our health funds are able to pay health claims without asking every resident in Bermuda to pay an additional $540 a year. So the clarity that I'm looking for is with the funds being taken from the excess borrowing fund, which are identified to pay claims, to use a portion of those funds for other purposes, not stated initially in the budget statement. I would just like to have a bit of clarity around how we've arrived at that and why it's working in that way, right? I would also like to have an idea of how long this health strengthening fund is going to be sort of the role of the fund. How long is it anticipated that these additional payments will be going into this account? Now, I do appreciate that initial deposits will be going in from what I recall from October to March 2025. Is it envisioned that health strengthening will be finished? The initial laying that foundation will be finished by then, or is it projected that it may go beyond that? I also wanted to make the point, Madam President, in terms of the additional level of bureaucracy that this seems to have been creating. And so it seems that a new fund has been created to be paid from the mutual insurance fund. And then when the funds in that new fund are no longer needed, then the funds go back to the mutual reinsurance fund. So if the junior minister can provide some clarification as to, again, what is underpinning that, because it just kind of seems like we're just moving from point A to point B to go back to point A. So again, as I mentioned, this is a complex matter, and so some clarity around those questions would be most appreciated. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Tucker. Would any other senator care to ask questions? Senator Dwayne Robinson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. And just looking for a bit of clarity, and it's not often I get to speak opposite of this honorable member. So good morning. How are you? I just wanted to get a bit of clarity on, because if we see in section 3AA, the everything is very detailed as far as what has been set aside in the mutual reinsurance fund for the purpose of digital health, and it lists system metrics, integrated care, and all manners of very specific things that would be used for. And as we go down into 3AB, which is the management of this fund, we get a very, very powerful, in my opinion, a very powerful measure for a minister to be able to direct the committee in writing to pay out of the HSS fund such sums of money to such persons or entities as the minister directs for the purpose of strengthening the health system in Bermuda. And this is a bit concerning for me because we have at the top of the legislation such a detailed and specific use of funds. Only for us to come down to this and get a very vague description, such as strengthening the Bermuda healthcare system. So I would just like clarity from the junior minister on what criteria the minister must go through in order to verify and also solidify the use of these funds to be able to transfer them or direct the transfer to certain entities or people, and also what constitutes from the ministry's point of view what strengthening the healthcare system entails, because I want to be sure that anything that's transferred under the behest of any minister is following a strict criteria of what that is looked for, where that's going, and what fits the bill to allow the minister to be able to do that. And that is not currently in legislation. So I'm hoping that it is regulated or in regulation somewhere. And also, it is very concerning as well that the Auditor General can only really report at the end of the financial year. It doesn't seem like there's any parliamentary oversight for whether or not these funds are justifiably taken. And the only person that will be able to verify that will be the Auditor General after the financial year is already passed. And we've seen some procurement issues in the past, very recently with government, as far as certain regulations being bypassed and certain monies being paid without correct oversight. So this is very concerning, and I would really like for the junior minister to drill down on the specifics on how this would occur. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Dwayne Robinson. Would any other senator care to speak? Senator Sarah. Vice President Karen Bell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I think my questions are somewhat similar. They really involve the governance structures around this new fund, and I think, as was indicated by Senator Tucker, this the history of this legislation can go right back to the recent amendment to the Government Loans Act. Which enabled funds to be taken from the sinking fund, essentially the excess, so defined part of the sinking fund, for the purpose of being paid into some other public fund, as might be designated by the Minister of Finance. So my first question is, can the junior minister confirm and direct us to where that might be confirmable in other legislation if this is HSS fund, which does not come under, as I understand, this comes under health and not finance, is a public fund. Secondly, if it is a public fund, and again, monies can only be taken from the sinking fund to another public fund, can she confirm whether the Constitution, which provides that monies can only be taken from a public fund, and this is, I'm doing this from memory, so forgive me, so she can certainly correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that monies can only be taken from a public fund if there has been a budget item for that expense. And these are not, as I understand it, from the statement which was read, budgeted items that were in the budget. So those are my sort of those are two of the governance questions. I also want to share the concerns that have been raised by the other senators around the overall governance around these public funds and how we have appropriate parliamentary oversight over that expenditure. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Karen Bell. Would any other senator care to speak on this bill? Hearing none, then it's over to you, Senator Hudson.
Thank you,
ready?
Madam President. I'd like to start with Senator
Tucker.
Senator Tucker's question. They all kind of work together. But I'll just outline some information I think that will help provide some clarity. The $1 million that will be deposited from the Access Borrowing Fund to the MRF is is only meant to enable the preparatory initiatives to improve the functioning of the health system, which would of course be in alignment with our national policies, plans, and strategies, which highlight quality care, equitable access, efficient service delivery, accountable governance, and sustainable financing. I think it's important to clarify that this fund is not intended to serve as the long-term source of funding for health system strengthening related activities. Essentially, as the transition from preparatory initiatives to sustained health system reform is made, the model of financing for long-term health system strengthening will be more clearly defined. This model will actually be based on the ongoing financial analysis of the current and future care costs, as well as data on the population's health needs. In a similar vein, it's important to note that the fund will only be dissolved when its defined purpose to carry out the aforementioned preparatory initiatives has actually been completed. And so, one of those initiatives is the modeling for healthcare services and related costs. And this emanates from the modeling that looks at the options for sustainable health systems financing, which would be based on the current and projected health needs. There were some questions about who and what in terms of the transferring of money, and I think it's important to highlight that the Health Insurance Committee will actually authorize the transfers, but that the Project Management Office will manage the health system strengthening activities. As Senator Bell indicated, the Ministry of Health Headquarters will actually develop the budget for the expenditure of the $1 million. And the Health Insurance Department will actually pay for the expense of implementing the fund allocation in accordance with its legislated purpose. I also think it's worth noting that the records of the transaction for all monies collected and expended by the fund will be maintained, and that an audit will be conducted to ensure transparency and accountability as would ordinarily be done. The Health Insurance Commission, will actually direct the preparation of the financial statements within 7 months of the end of the fund's financial year, reflecting the details of its operations, and will also provide the Auditor General with copies of said statements. And of course, in normal fashion, the Auditor General will then examine the financial statements and prepare a written report for the minister that will be laid before the legislature as soon as practicable. Let me just go through my notes, Madam President.
Senator Karen Bell, you have an additional
Just a
question?
supplementary, just a clarification, just to make sure I understood. Thank you very much, Junior Minister. I just wanted to make sure I understood. So I think what you have just indicated, for which I'm grateful, is that any funds which go into this HSS fund will not be spent, and in particular will not be directed by the minister to be paid out of the HSS fund until those funds have gone through the constitutional requirements in Order 95. That is, that there will be an expenditure authorized by the appropriation law or supplementary estimate.
Senator Bell, the short answer is yes, and I can actually provide some detail around how we will actually spend the $30 million throughout the Bermuda Hospital Board and the Health Insurance Department, along with the $1 million for the Health System Strengthening Fund. So between October 2024 and March 2025, the Bermuda Hospital Board will receive 6 payments of $2.8 million for a total of $17 million. Between October 2024 and March 2025, the Health Insurance Department will receive 6 payments of $2 million to total $12 million. Between October 2024 and March 2025, the Health System Strengthening Fund will receive 6 payments of $167,000 to total $1 million. and the total monthly allocations across the BHB, HID, and the Health System Strengthening Fund between October 2024 and March 2025 is $5 million, which will total at $30 million. I think it's also important to highlight that we intend to spend all of the funds, but in the instance that the funds would not be spent, then the unused funds would actually go back to the consolidated fund, not the MRF. Hope that provides some clarity.
Madam President, if I may, just with a supplemental, the question wasn't concerning what the representations are about what the money will now be spent on. The question related to whether or not these were expenditures in the government budget. And if they are not in the government, were not in the government budget that was approved through the parliamentary process and oversight process as an appropriation bill, whether there will be a supplementary estimate that will be presented. That was the fundamental purpose of the question. Turning to the second comment that you indicated, which is that the monies will be returned to the consolidated fund. That's not what the Act currently provides, which is before us. So I think if that is the intention, which respectfully I think is the right intention, this bill should be amended to reflect that. Thank you.
Apologies, I did just want to clarify. The monies will be returned to the Mutual Reinsurance Fund. I'm sorry, I did misspeak in that instance. Okay, I've also, the indication is that according to the Public Funds Act 1954, the Ministry of Finance actually has the power to control and invest public funds that include three public bodies or authorities, one of which is the Health Insurance Department.
Apologies, Madam President, but just to go back to, if with your leave, to the debate around the Government Loans Act. So there was considerable debate about the Government Loans Act and the withdrawal of money from the sinking fund, and there was general discussion about that process and the restrictions within that legislation and where funds taken from the sinking fund can go and how they can be applied, which leads directly back to the Constitution and Order 95 or 96 from memory. So I think we don't need to belabor the point. I'm not sure that the junior minister is able today to answer these questions, and for those reasons, I'm going to find it difficult to support a bill that I'm not confident is within all four corners of our Constitution. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kirabel.
Madam President, I guess there are some questions about the movement of the funds. However, essentially, the funds would return to the MRF, which in turn could be returned to the Consolidated Fund under the Health Insurance Act of 1970. And so I move that the bill entitled the Health Insurance Health System Strengthening Fund Amendment Act 2024 be now read a second time.
Mr. Senator Robinson, you have.
Sorry, Madam President, I'm still waiting on the answers as far as what are the regulations and criteria when it comes to strengthening the healthcare system, and also what regulations and criteria are being applied to the minister writing into direct funds being paid.
I'm sorry, can he repeat that?
Just looking for the criteria as it states in the bill to what constitutes strengthening the healthcare system, because it's not stipulated in the legislation. So I'm looking for the regulations the ministry is looking for as to justification for the movement of funds as directed by the minister, and also looking for the criteria for the entities and people and what they meet in order to receive those funds to be justified, because the minister can direct payment to these entities.
Madam President, the criteria are taken from the Health Strategy 2022 through 2027, which indicate the development of the core benefits package, planning for digitizing the health system, finance modeling for health services, and developing a workforce strategy, which are all critical building blocks to health system strengthening. And so again, this is in support of the items that were already outlined in our health strategy.
Thank you, Senator Ariana Hudson. So you can now move your bill then. Is there any objection to the second reading? Hearing none. Is there any objection to that motion? No objection. Is there any objection to the third reading? No objection. It has been moved that the bill do now pass. Is there any objection to that motion? No objection. The bill is passed. Thank you, Senator Ariana Hudson, and thank you all senators. We'll now move on to the next item on our orders of the day, and that is the second reading of item number 10, the Bermuda Health Council Amendment Number 2 Act 2024, and that is also in the name of Senator Ariana Hudson, the Junior Minister for Health. Senator Hudson, when you are ready, you can present your bill.
Madam President, I move that the bill entitled the Bermuda Health Council Health Service Providers Licensing Regulations I'd like to move that the bill entitled the Bermuda Health Council Amendment Number 2 Act 2024 be now read a second time.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, today I present the bill entitled the Bermuda Health Council Amendment Number 2 Act 2024. Madam President, our health system must be ready to meet the needs of the next decade. We must be smarter, stronger, and working together to support the complexity of an aging population, to address the real needs of our patients, to better prevent disease, and to promote wellness within our population. We must be consistent in our approach and efficient in our outcomes. While there is no single solution that will create the perfect health system, there are some effective strategies and tools that we are adding and must add to the health system table in order to fortify and to strengthen it. Successful implementation of the Bermuda Health Strategy 2022-2027, including universal health coverage, requires a legal framework to manage the various moving pieces of the health system. The Bermuda Health Council already has the role of regulating, coordinating, and enhancing the delivery of health services in Bermuda. The proposed amendments to the Act will allow the Council to better fulfill its role and mandate as intended when it was enacted in 2004. The Health Council plays a critical role in objectively advising and assisting with the achievement of the Bermuda government's objectives with respect to health system strengthening. Analyzing data, providing reports, collecting community feedback, developing regulatory policy, and registering health professionals are all in their remit. The Council's function of data collection and analysis for population health decision-making has already been enabled through the First Amendment of the Act. Building on the gains of the First Amendment, this bill aims to address the evolving landscape of our healthcare system. Madam President, the proposed amendments in this bill are timely and necessary, considering the influence of market forces on the healthcare system. We need to ensure that activities such as acquisitions and mergers within the sector prioritize the health and well-being of Bermuda's residents, while also promoting accessible and affordable healthcare for all. A key measure of accessibility is how well our community members can navigate through a web of options related to their healthcare. Currently, a comprehensive inventory of health services and providers is being developed to establish a clear mapping of health businesses, build an evidence base for assessing the service needs, and ensure we have optimal resource allocation. While the Bermuda Health Council Act 2004 established a framework for the licensing of health businesses, the full implementation of this process is now being realized through the proposed amendments. A licensing framework must also ensure the alignment of health businesses with the evolving healthcare needs of our population. The best practice of doing that is through monitoring established services, identifying gaps in need of businesses, and managing the responsible entry of new health businesses. The objective being to maintain balance in the health system while also promoting innovation in modern methods. This bill creates an opportunity to enhance the engagement of our health businesses with the public by strengthening standards and expectations for the delivery of safe, effective, and responsive care to patients. The licensing process will support businesses by providing tools to enhance the principles of people-centered care under strong leadership. With this bill, there is also an opportunity to enhance oversight of health system providers to ensure adherence to operational standards such as equipment maintenance and complaints handling, and promote transparency in areas such as service pricing and conflicts of interest. Madam President, an enhanced review process of potential conflicts of interest, such as self-referrals or those incentivized by financial interests, are needed and will be enabled by the bill. This is about improving transparency in the operational processes and ensuring that protocols abide by the standards of practice related to medical necessity of referrals. Such referrals should never be driven solely by the desire to receive compensation for services such as labs, diagnostic imaging services, pharmacy, durable medical equipment, home therapies, or other ancillary services where a financial relationship is prioritized. Such referrals must always be driven by what is in the best interest of the health of the patient. Enhancing transparency in the referral process can help to promote appropriate utilization of services, contributing to sustainability and efficiency in a more affordable health system. Bermuda's current fee-for-service model presents certain challenges, including the potential for misalignment between service provision and actual healthcare needs. The proposed amendments seek to encourage a shift towards business models that prioritize value-based care and are more fairly compensated for quality health outcomes and preventive measures, instead of just volume of services completed. Madam President, the need for these controls is not unique to Bermuda. In the U.S., the Stark Law prevents physicians from referring patients for certain medical services covered by Medicare to entities where they have a financial interest, unless an exemption applies. Stark Law aims to prevent conflicts of interest that might lead to unnecessary or inappropriate medical services. However, there are specific exceptions, and the government has the authority to create additional exceptions if this financial relationship does not pose a risk to the program or patients. Madam President, this bill generally seeks to help our communities navigate through the health system, assure quality care and safety for patients, encourages medically necessary and clinically appropriate utilization, promotes an ethical, efficient, and transparent health system, promotes and ensures minimum standards for health businesses, promotes cost-effective care that is accessible, controls the entry of medically necessary high-risk health technology, and formalizes consultation on and approval of enhanced and fair accountability and review of the Council's budget by the Ministers of Health and Finance. Madam President, the stakeholder engagement sessions conducted in October and November of 2023, as well as August and September of 2024, recognized and addressed concerns about the difference between the licensing of health service providers and the licensing of the businesses run by health providers. I would like to make it clear that the current amendments are only aimed at addressing the licensing of the businesses of health businesses and not the clinical or profession-specific standards of the practitioners. Madam President, in subsequent consultative meetings, these standards of operation and codes of practice for financially vested referrals will be further elaborated on in collaboration with the health statutory bodies and associations most relevant to the nature of the service provided by the applicable business. For this example, standards of operation for dental practices and standards related to dental referrals will be drafted in collaboration with the Board of Dental Practitioners. Examples of focus areas for standards of operation include themes like infection prevention and control, proper storage of medication, and efficient physical management of patient records, and effective management of patient appointments to ensure timely, safe, and quality care. Madam President, with this clarification, it was apparent from both the virtual and in-person sessions, as well as written feedback, that most health businesses and stakeholders do not oppose the regulatory need for licensing as a strategy for protecting patient rights and upholding high standards for the operation of health businesses in Bermuda. Madam President, information received via the aforementioned stakeholder consultation and engagement sessions directly assisted with the Health Council with the drafting of this bill, as well as regulations. In a show of good faith and absolute transparency, an open Google spreadsheet listing the proposed requirements in the bill and the two regulations was posted on the Bermuda Health Council's website at www.healthcouncil.bm/consultations. As comments, questions, and suggestions were received, redline revisions to the requirements were posted in near real time, and the FAQs dataset was enhanced. These consultation resources are still available for review on the Health Council website and have been supplemented with the uploading of the post-consultation versions of the bill and two sets of proposed regulations, even in advance of them being tabled in the House of Assembly on the 20th of September 2024. Madam President, Section 13.1 of the Bermuda Health Council Act 2004 asserts that no person, group of persons, or organization shall carry on a business as a health service provider unless licensed to do so under regulations made under Section 15. However, Section 13 has not been operationalized because regulations for licensing the businesses of health service providers required to be made by the Minister under Section 15 of the Act have not previously existed. Madam President, I am happy to report that the Bermuda Health Council Health Service Provider Licensing Regulations 2024 have now been drafted and will be debated today for approval. Madam President, this bill seeks to augment Section 15 of the Act to enable the effective implementation of licensing of health service providers by the Council. Regulations made under this bill can apply to all health businesses, including but not limited to hospitals, medical practices, dental practices, medical device retailers, and administrative services related to health, including residential care. Madam President, it is noteworthy that the implementation of health business licensing is not unique to Bermuda. It aligns with practices in numerous respected jurisdictions globally. For instance, the Care Quality Commission in England is an independent regulator of health and social care services. The CQC ensures that hospitals, clinics, and other healthcare providers meet stringent standards of quality and safety. Similarly, in the United States, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services have a robust system for certifying healthcare providers' participation in Medicare and Medicaid programs. This certification process involves rigorous evaluations of quality, safety, and compliance with federal regulations. Madam President, health business licensing schemes are widely recognized for their positive impact on healthcare quality and safety. By setting and enforcing standards, they help to protect patients from harm and ensure they receive appropriate care. For businesses, licensing can enhance the business reputation and credibility, demonstrating a commitment to best practices. It can also facilitate collaboration and referrals. Madam President, licensing will apply to all health service providers and health businesses. The Health Council will collaboratively establish the business standards with which providers in each health business category are to comply for successful licensing. The envisioned licensing scheme aims to foster continued collaboration between the Council and healthcare providers to ensure that new services align with the health needs of our population. It will also facilitate effective oversight of operational practices, promoting patient safety, appropriate care, and transparency in service utilization. Madam President, turning to the regulation of high-risk health technologies, it is important to measure and balance the population's health needs with the availability of health technologies to meet those needs. The proposed amendments empower the Council to continue collaborating with stakeholders in regulating high-risk health technology, including provisions for importation and licensing of those technologies. These provisions strengthen the ability of the Council to take inventory and to ensure there is continuous safe and technically skilled operation and appropriate maintenance and repair of high-risk health technology in Bermuda. This also includes identifying equipment that has reached the end of its lifespan and should be replaced for better patient treatment. This function of the Council is pivotal to health system reformation, applying an efficient and sustainable model of care. Madam President, an important feature of this bill is the amended treatment of the budgetary provision for the Bermuda Health Council and the provisions governing fees paid to and collected by the Council. For other Crengos, such as the Bermuda Airport Authority and the Bermuda Civil Aviation Authority, the minister responsible for the authorities and the Minister of Finance have oversight of the organization's budget. Like those organizations, the Health Council is a Crengo, which receives a grant from the Bermuda government. This is in addition to a portion of the Mutual Reinsurance Fund, which every insured person pays as part of their health insurance premium, and other operational revenues. The amendment to the Act now provides for approval of the Council's budget by the Minister of Health and the Minister of Finance. The Council will be required to submit to the Ministers of Health and Finance the income and expenditure estimates needed to develop its annual budget. The proposed amendments mirror those found in the Bermuda Airport Authority Act 2017. Madam President, the Council's licensing processes require resources, and therefore application fees will be established to offset administrative and inspection costs. However, because the Health Council is a Crengo and not a government department and will be responsible for the licensing and registration work, the Health Council fees will no longer be provided for under the Government Fees Regulations 1976. The bill amends the Act to give authority to the minister to set fees and for the Health Council to collect rational fees for applications, renewals, and other services carried out in the discharge of its functions. This change aligns with what exists in other health legislation. For
Yes.
example, fees made via the Bermuda Hospital Board Hospital Fees Regulations 2018 are set with the approval of the minister responsible for health. The same approach will now be taken with respect to Health Council fees for licensing and registration activities. The Health Council is already authorized to collect fees for the registration of all regulated health professions, except those under the Bermuda Medical Council and Bermuda Nursing and Midwifery Council. This provision will enable the Health Council to charge and collect the fees for applications regarding licensing of health service providers and the importation and/or registration of high-risk health technology. Madam President, the bill proposes refining the deterrents and penalties under the Act. The proposed amendments include adjustments to the penalty structure, focusing on financial deterrence while ensuring proportionality and alignment with modern practices. The penalties of imprisonment have been removed. These and all other penalties were reviewed with the intent of ensuring the penalties in the Act are aligned with deterrence and other Bermuda laws, and that fines are proportionate to the degree of harm that might be inflicted because of contraventions. Where appropriate, provisions for modern processes for civil penalties have been proposed to be included in the Act. The Council, in collaboration with the Ministry, will develop a clear and transparent procedure for the implementation of civil penalties. Madam President, on the issue of inspections, there is recognition that a broad scope of technical expertise will be required to inspect various types of health businesses. Therefore, subject matter experts will be engaged by the Council to conduct appropriate inspections. Inspectors will also collaborate with health businesses to conduct desk audits on documents such as records related to fee policies, external costs of doing business, and service utilization, ensuring transparency and adherence to established standards. Madam President, in closing, the unsustainable nature of Bermuda's present healthcare system, our aging population, and shifts in the health sector driven by market forces, but outside the control of the government, with its duty to ensure that the system primarily serves the health needs of our society, demonstrates the need to progress the two main objectives of the amendments to this bill. That is, the enactment of Section 13 of the Bermuda Health Council Act 2004, which gives the Bermuda Health Council the legislative authority to license the businesses of health service providers, and the addition of the provision for the Council to regulate the importation and registration of high-risk health technologies. Madam President, this represents the full amendments proposed by this bill, and I hereby introduce the Bermuda Health Council Amendment Number 2, Act 2024, to the Senate on behalf of the Ministry of Health. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Hudson. And before I open the floor for questions, I would just like to acknowledge in the chamber the Deputy Premier and Minister of Home Affairs and the Acting Minister of Health, Mr. Walter Robin. Welcome to you, sir. Would any senator care to speak on this bill? Senator Robin Tucker, the leader OBA in the Senate, you have the floor.
Good morning again, Madam President, and thank you to the Junior Minister for that very comprehensive brief. I'll start by saying that I think that the end goal for everyone, for the Health Council, the health service providers, and all, I think the end goal is the same. They want the best outcome for their patients. With that in mind, Madam President, I think that I am concerned, not a lot. There are some concerns in the bill and in the regulations as to how stringent and how much bureaucracy, red tape, slowing processes down, and the like can result. I am particularly concerned, Madam President, about the calls that have been made from the health services providers community about lack of adequate and full consultation. I don't think that if we in this room are also supportive about ensuring best patient outcomes, that we can ignore that in view of this bill and the related regulations. Particularly, Madam President, if we recall that, and we all will recall some months ago, that each member of Parliament was contacted by members of the health community because they felt that inadequate consultation had been provided to them on a similar matter. So again, we fast forward to present day and we find ourselves again in similar situations where we have members of the health services community taken to the media, contacting us directly, sending us emails to again ask for our help because they do not feel that they have had adequate consultation on this particular bill. As I mentioned, Madam President, I think that this bill may unintentionally create a level of bureaucracy and red tape and delays that probably are not in the best interest of patients and patient care. I also think, Madam President, it is a bit worrisome to me, obviously not as a health professional, but certainly someone who is a patient, that potential delays as it relates to getting new technologies into Bermuda can impact my ability as a patient. That's a real concern, because again, this legislation starts from even one having to, a health service provider actually has to get permission to import their high risk technology. And in getting that permission, they obviously, there is a process and potential delays there. One of the things, Madam President, that from a practical point of view, one would recall that there was an issue getting an MRI machine here. And anyone present day who needed an MRI and is claustrophobic or overweight that was not able to get into those closed MRI machines would certainly appreciate the fact that there is a newer technology here, there is a new machine here that is an open MRI machine, and they're able to get in it without the impact that they had when there would be having to use a closed machine. So with that said, Madam President, I also want to say on the other side, which is, of course, the Bermuda Health Council needs to have the teeth in order to carry out his functions, again, to ensure that people and best outcomes, health outcomes are achieved. So I'm not saying that, there is an issue there. I understand and I appreciate that. But Madam President, there needs to be some alignment between the health services providers, making sure as the experts that they are able to have an appropriate say and feel like they have been heard. And I do recognize that it was said that consultation has been provided. However, there is a reliable body of people that will be most affected directly by this, that feel like consultation has not been adequate, full consultation has not been adequate. And I think that, again, for the best outcome of the patients, to ensure that the Health Council is able to regulate, but that not only the medical professionals, but the health services professionals are also have that opportunity to have their input on matters that are going to affect them most directly and by extension patients, because at the end of the day, it's patient care that we are most concerned about. So there may be some reason why we're rushing this through now. I frankly, Madam President, don't think it's in the best interest of everyone, considering everything that's going on, considering we've got lawyers or the health services providers, some of them have lawyers now involved to try to get certain things adjusted. And so in good conscience, how do we in this chamber sit with that information that we know, and then we just ignore them and then press this through? Madam President, I do not and cannot support this bill for those reasons in particular. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Robin Tucker-Wooding. Senator Karen Bell, Vice President, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. And at the risk of being a little repetitive, I do have two principled concerns, one around the consultation and one around the substance of what's in the Act and the regulations. So I'll deal with consultation first. Like other senators, I received calls from health service providers who were alarmed by the proposed legislation and the regulations, and they were also alarmed about the process. One medical practitioner told me that the Health Council, in a consultation call, had explained to the doctors and the dentists that the draft legislation had not been circulated because it was, and I'm quoting, protocol. I laughed and said that that could not possibly be right. And so I was invited to actually listen for myself to the consultation, and I did over the weekend. So my overarching impression, having listened to this consultation process, was complete confusion. There was confusion on the part of the doctors and the dentists, and there was also confusion on the part of the Health Council as to what it was that was actually being proposed and had been laid before Parliament. And I'll get to the confusion on the part of the Health Council subsequently on the substance point. But the doctors and the dentists on this consultation call were being asked to comment on legislation that they had not laid eyes on. They had not seen it. And when they asked why they had not seen it, and they were of course confused and thought they were talking about another piece of legislation that had already been passed by the houses, they were told specifically on multiple occasions that it was protocol not to circulate draft legislation in advance. And so my first question, and we have the government leader for the Senate here today, we have the Attorney General here today, and we also have the Junior Minister here today. Is it the current position of the government that it has a protocol not to circulate draft legislation in advance as part of its consultation process? Yes or no? I don't believe that that is the case, and I have to assume that the members of the Health Council who made those representations misunderstood what they had been told. But if I am wrong on that, and this is in fact the protocol, which is what was represented, and I heard it in multiple times stated, this is something which needs to be answered. So if I can move on to the substantive issue. When I listened to all of the consultation, and I also went and reviewed the consultation material, which was on the website, which included things like a PowerPoint presentation. And I'm actually just going to pause for a moment and focus on the PowerPoint presentation. The PowerPoint presentation refers to rights of appeal and judicial review as bullets. And so as a layperson reading that PowerPoint presentation, you might actually think you had a right of appeal if you were a health service provider who had been denied their license, or you were a business that had been denied the opportunity to bring in a particular expensive piece of equipment. There is no right of appeal. That right of appeal does not exist. And listening to the consultation process, it's clear that there is confusion about what is the difference between a right of appeal and judicial review. And the easiest way for me to explain what the difference is to say that judicial review in the context of a decision is concerned with the how the decision was made. What was the process by which the decision was made? Was it fair? Did you have an opportunity to be heard? An appeal, in contrast, is concerned with whether the right decision was made at all. And the reason that those distinctions are important and critical is because, I'll just pause just for a moment, just in case. You're okay. Sorry. The reason that that distinction is critical to make is that a health service provider has no appeal now, as things currently stand, if this legislation goes through with the associated regulations, to a denial of a license. And in fact, the draft regulations limit the common law rights of judicial review, or at least purport to. And none of this was revealed in advance to the in terms to the health service providers who are affected by this. And to be clear, this affects their livelihood and their ability to earn a living. So one can understand why there is an element of alarm. But the concern that I have around the consultation process is when you have representations being made by the Health Council who are doing their best. This isn't me criticizing, the members of the Health Council. They're doing their best. They think that they're representing the right thing. But they're saying to the doctors and the dentists, look, if you and I'm actually quoting from the words that we use, if there's a disagreement between us, you can go and have judicial review. Well, no, actually, you don't get to go have judicial review if there's a disagreement. A disagreement is not good enough. There has to be a failure in the process. Judicial review is not about the decision that was reached, it was how the decision was reached. And so the question I have to ask in light of that, and in light of the fact that there was such poor consultation around this legislation and previous pieces of legislation, is can we come up with a way in which it is appropriate in advance, not in a piecemeal fashion, not in such a short and truncated fashion, to put all of the relevant legislation with its associated regulations, with all of the various application processes that might be there, so that these professionals and health service providers and businesses can see how these fundamental changes to how they conduct business will affect them. And this is not an unreasonable ask. In other jurisdictions which publish consultation guidelines, and I've looked at the UK, I've looked at Ireland, I've looked at Canada, I've looked at all of the other Commonwealth jurisdictions that publish consultation principles, it goes between 6 and 12 weeks. And in some cases, months longer for substantive major changes. And so with respect to my fellow members of Parliament who are sitting here today, we must do better. And that is the way in which we create trust between both the regulated and the regulator. That is how you create that trust element, which I also heard was an issue during this consultation call. So let's do better. Let's do proper consultation. Let's publish draft legislation well in advance so that everybody has an opportunity to consider what the implications are, and to enable all of us sitting here today to pass better legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kieran Bell. Would any other senator care to speak on this bill? No other senator? Oh, Senator Robinson, you want to speak on the bill?
Thank you, Madam President. And I know we have a busy day, so I won't belabor or repeat any points. I just wanted to really lend my support to my Senate leader in her presentation, and really to highlight the fact that we understand that the regulator has its responsibilities and must operate within its remit to the best and fullest of its ability. We also understand that, you know, the healthcare professionals also have their own interest to not only provide care, but also to themselves and to their industry. The balance that must be struck here is, if we're going to chart into a new path of healthcare, if we're going to move towards universal healthcare, which the government actually has the OBA support in, we need to make sure that we find the right mix of the regulator and the regulatees and the folks in the industry that are going to be ensuring the optimum service of Bermudians. Because at the end of the day, that's who we sit here for. Even though we are appointed, many of us also represent or hope to represent constituencies and areas of people who constantly let us know the need for reform. So I don't want to stifle or to attack government looking to reform these things, because there is no doubt that the reform is absolutely necessary in order to ensure that healthcare in Bermuda moves forward and is more affordable and applicable to everyone. However, we as legislators, appointed or not, are still responsible to the community and to Bermuda and to the patients who will be in this new system and will be administered to by these doctors, dentists, and the rest. And therefore, if we have the patients and the Bermudian public seeing a disconnect between the regulator and the folks who are administering their healthcare, that in itself creates an alarm that I think will only seek to undermine all the government's efforts to reform in this area. Because no matter what happens, the people of Bermuda must have trust in their system. And if their professionals are speaking out publicly, it may not be all, but many are speaking out publicly, expressing concerns about the not only the consultation, but also many things within the bill that will make their positions cumbersome and allow them to provide care. I think that it's on a responsible government to take a step back and make sure that before any of these regulations and changes are made, that the people who are administering that care can project a unified position with government and the regulator to provide that trust factor, which was mentioned previously by one of my colleagues. But I refer to the trust factor between the community and our healthcare system, which is also under strain. And I know everybody knocks on doors, so everybody hears that it is a growing distrust and displeasure with the amount paid and the trust that they will get, the quality of care that they are paying for. So we have to make sure that in this chamber we know whose interests we represent, and that in times like this where a regulator and those who are being regulated are at impasse, it is on government and the legislators to find a way to bridge that impasse and not just stick to platform pledges and all the rest to the very end, but also to be movable and to be reasonable. So with that, I have to also state that I will not be supporting the bill in its current state, and that I will yield my time back to Junior Minister.
Thank you, Senator Robinson. Would any other senator care to speak on this bill? Senator Kim Wilkerson, AG. You have the floor.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Madam President. Good morning, members of the listening public. Let me start with answering the direct question of my learned friend, Ms. Bell, on the question of what is the protocol with respect to consultation and seeing draft bills. I certainly have never heard that that is a protocol, that draft bills would not be shared. Certainly, as you would know, members of the public certainly know, I've spent 40 years in the international business sector, and the rigor with which we exchange and consult on legislation and draft bills from the BMA with the insurance industry, I think is a gold standard of how it should be done. So I know, as a matter of fact, that the idea that there is a protocol around not sharing bills is absolutely incorrect. Now, I do not know the circumstances as to the timing of the drafting in this particular case, and why there wasn't greater sharing of the draft bill. But certainly there has been sharing, because we've all had detailed letters back about the shortfalls in the bill. So we know at this point the medical community and health business providers have seen the legislation. They've seen the draft already. As to whether they should have had more time, I think that is a point that certainly has been raised, and I, for one, have no issue with that. I would imagine, as busy practitioners, I think the idea of having to consult counsel to help you to review a piece of draft legislation is something that indeed takes time. I too have heard the concerns around the consultative process, and I agree that more can be done. And I think that agreeing with Ms. Bell, we must do better in terms of consultation. But we have to agree at this point that there has been consultation. It may not have been at the gold standard, right? But there has been consultation. And I think, as Mr. Richardson has pointed out, a balance has... No, Richardson. Robinson, sorry. Robinson. I'm trying to rename you here. A balance has to be struck. We understand what this bill is aiming to do in terms of the importance to members of the public, that they should know that if you were going for treatment and you were going to a new MRI machine, that there is somebody other than the practitioner or the health service provider who's getting a fee, who's vetted and confirmed that that machine is doing what it is said to do, that your expensive hospital insurance bills, right, are paying for the service that you believe you're getting. So there is an absolute place for the level of oversight that the Health Council is trying to achieve with this bill. And so I would just say that, yes, I accept that there are measures to be worked out in terms of the go forward consultation. Uh, and I agree with um, Ms. Bell on the questions around how do you challenge a decision of the Health Council. And it can't be right that you have to go back to the body that made the decision for a review. I think this is a clear point where um, there could be improvements. But on balance, Madam President, on balance, I have to support what this bill is aiming to do, and I believe it meets the overarching objective, notwithstanding that there are things that could be honed as we go forward. So those are my comments, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator A.G. Wilkerson. Would any other senator care to speak on this bill? Hearing none, I have just a few comments to make myself. As a former health professional for many years, and someone who was involved in the creation and the recommendation for a health council way back with Senator Orton, his review of health care. So this is nothing new to me in terms of the role of the health council and the regulation that has to occur within a jurisdiction. And as you have heard, this is not new. I mean, there are countries that have regulatory bodies. May not call them health councils, but they do exist, and they need to exist for the protection of the inhabitants of the country in which they live or they govern. So I also know that the health council, the representation on the health council is very broad in terms of health providers, health people who work in the health field, and I know many of them, in fact. So and I agree with the AG that in terms of the consultation, maybe is not what has been desired by the medical profession, but I remember the last issue of consultation over a bill that was presented here, and I was told fervently by many that they were not consulted. And yet I was absolutely shown film where these same doctors or professionals who were saying they were not present, and there they were. And, I looked at it and I said to myself, why would you be contacting me and tell me that you were not consulted when I have evidence before me of your being present? But give that aside, I understand the concern that people have over the role of the health council. I really do, and I agree with the AG that maybe this needs to be improved. But there has been time for the various practitioners, and particularly those who have equipment, who bring in equipment and carry out tests and whatever on patients. But the council also has a responsibility to oversee what is being done in the community regarding patients. And so when I look at this, I've said that I believe that the representation on the council is good, and certainly we can certainly improve how we relate to the medical profession and also those who provide services in the community. And I understand when Senator Tucker talked about the MRI machine some time ago, but we've gone much more further than that with MRI machines. There's so much technology that's going on. But at the same time, I look at Bermuda and I see it as a small jurisdiction, yet, and we're also very close to the mainland. We have arrangements with hospitals overseas that patients can be transferred over hospital um, at, within hours of a crisis. I am not saying that um, those doctors or those practitioners who have various equipment that they can't provide some service. But one of the things I have also heard is that even when tests and various things are done on island, when we have to, if it proves that the patient needs further care, when they go overseas, sometimes the hospital that they go to, they have to repeat the test. I don't know what that is about. However, in reviewing the bill and reviewing the role of the council, I will say that I support this bill. I support it because I believe in the role and the responsibilities of the Health Council. Because in all jurisdictions where you have patients and where you have services to be provided, there needs to be an oversight body who looks at what is being done in the jurisdiction. We tend to be we are very lucky. We're a 60 plus thousand population. And when you look at places overseas have a larger populations, they don't have some of the services that we have, and they don't have access to um, those bodies that can do, or the major hospitals that we have access to. So we don't want to shortchange our population, our people here, to say that because you can't have this test done on island, that you are being denied service, because we are an hour and a half away from um, facilities overseas where patients can have the treatment that they deserve. So while I see there's some shortcomings and I hear the complaints, and I certainly have been um, contacted by service providers who have asked me not to support the bill. And I do not appreciate the fact of getting, calls to say don't support it. Um, I do support it because I believe in the creation of this council. I believe in the membership of the council, and I know that they are very, um, very concerned about Bermuda and the population and the role that they have to play in this island. So I support the bill, and I will say that I, like others, expect to see an improvement in the consultation, but I am not going to hold off on this very important legislation at this point. I support it, and I take my hat off to the members of the Health Council for the role that they play. Sometimes, they've been getting a lot of hits about the decisions that they have made in recent times, and I think that they need to know that there is support and there is, uh, concern, but we need to thank them for the role that they play, because they're not just there to make a decision, but they know what is going on in the world. It's their role to know what other health councils are doing. So with those remarks, I would like to say that I support the bill. I understand the hesitation, but I think it is good that we have such a council who can put through legislation or recommendations to oversee the state of health in Bermuda. And this year is I think the World Health Organization says it's the year of health, and I think we need to be concerned about the health of our population. So with that, I hand over to Senator Ariana Hudson to address any concerns or questions that may not have been addressed, and to
Yes,
pass your bill.
thank you, Madam President. Thank you for your support. I'd like to consider, I tend to consider myself a reasonable person. And so I often understand the nuances and I guess, various concerns that are sometimes raised in this place. I think it's important to highlight the fact that the sharing of drafts did not signify the beginning of this consultation process. When we look at the data, the consultative process actually commenced back in October of 2023. And after over 500 stakeholders were actually invited The initial meeting took place with representation from 47 health businesses. In November, the following month, we had another 49 businesses. During this time, the core tenets of the bill were definitely discussed with the stakeholders, and we highlighted the intent to protect patient safety by licensing health businesses and the registration of the high-risk health technologies. Um, since that year, we've actually had some follow-up discussions. During the August 13th session, stakeholders were actually invited to provide written feedback. And there were also instances where they actually set up one-on-one meetings, and some advisors took them up on that offer. Um, this approach was appropriate to maintain order and the sharing of feedback during a virtual meeting with several participants. Um, I think we should highlight that actually 10 health businesses provided written feedback to the council. And there was actually 3 of those private meetings that were held. I just wanted to share that. Notwithstanding, while it's not usual that we share draft legislation in all of these instances, we actually took the step to share draft legislation, and we actually published it on the Bermuda Health Council's website on the 17th of September. Which, leads to the conversation that we can do better in terms of collaboration. And I'm sure we'll explore other avenues, but we are having these conversations, and there were many persons involved in these conversations. And perhaps something worthwhile is encouraging many of these practitioners to get involved in some of these conversations at earlier points so that some of these items don't come as such a surprise. And I understand we all have work to do, and that they're all working in the best interests of our patients. However, consultation is one of those things. How much is too much? How much is too little? For one example, I was thinking about it logically. And if I'm drafting legislation, and I'm not a drafter, but I can imagine that there are various forms of a bill that come before we get to that final draft bill that is then shared, circulated for review. And so I applaud the ministry for, in this instance, going out to share that extra detail. There was some questions from Senator Tucker in terms of processes and the red tape that we typically see. And so I want to say that the licensing for business, we're looking at every 3 years, that the application form is not cumbersome. It's actually short. And I think in going through the process, we'll refine it to get the right mix. It will be similar to a voluntary application that has been used for the last 5 years, actually. And of course, we continue to refine these forms and processes based on the feedback that we received. The registration for equipment will be every year and only for select equipment. However, this should actually look similar to some processes that should be in place, ensuring that the equipment that they're using is maintained. I think it's important to highlight that the Health Council does not want to create any more obstacles that will make it harder for business to operate in Bermuda, and that local businesses are actually success stories for us. And we want to increase our support for those businesses, particularly within the health sector. There was a comment from Senator Tucker that I just want to correct with regards to the delay in getting the MRI machine into Bermuda. And I want to make it clear that there was no restriction of allowing an MRI on island. The question was whether there should be guaranteed payment for services under the standard health benefit, considering the concerns from the public on healthcare costs. There was always a question about why now, is it time sensitive? And I would say it is a time sensitive matter because the system has been too reactive to changes that are impacting our patients on a daily basis. The urgency is for the health system to be designed for the protection of patient safety and quality of care. And the further we delay these types of matters, the farther out we can see the successes that we're all looking for. As a matter of interest, the bill has actually been sitting for 8 years, and it was actually first tabled in 2016. So I'm pleased that we're able to progress as we are seeing today. Again, I don't want to go too far into the back and forth between consultation, what was appropriate, what wasn't appropriate, but I can say that consultation has happened. I also don't want to go too far down the road of the rights of appeal and judicial review. But I can say that the process of judicial review is a common practice route that is typically followed by regulatory boards and other health legislations. The government's mission is to make Bermuda healthier, and our definition for universal health coverage is to ensure that all people have equitable access to preventative, curative, rehabilitative, and palliative essential health services of sufficient quality to be effective, while also ensuring that people do not suffer financial hardship in paying for these services and critical medicines. And I think it's important again to highlight that we're really focusing on patient-centered care. I often hear about the stakeholders involved and their consideration, but I think that we often forget that the biggest stakeholder here is the public. It's the Bermudian people. And this legislation is ensuring that we're able to take the next steps to implement the appropriate regulations and to develop the appropriate business standards that increase or that enhance the services that are currently provided to the Bermudian people. I'm just referencing my notes to make sure that I haven't missed any direct questions. Much of what was shared was commentary today. I believe that I've covered the matters highlighted for question, Madam President. And so I'd like to move that the bill entitled the Bermuda Health Council Amendment Number 2 Act 2024 be now read a second time.
Is there any objection to the second reading?
Madam President, can I make a motion to call for names for those that support and do not support this bill, please?
And so we will have a roll call. Spiel will handle that.
All right. In terms of the roll call vote, say aye if you're in support of the bill and no or nay if you are not. And Senator Takuto is absent. Senator Dwayne Robinson.
Nay.
Senator Tucker.
No.
Minister Darrell.
Yes.
Senator Hodgson.
Yes.
Senator Leslie Robinson.
Yes.
Senator Lindsay Simmons.
Yes.
Minister Wilkerson. Sorry.
Miss. Yes.
Senator Bell.
Nay.
Senator White is absent. Madam President.
Yay, yes.
There are 6 votes in favor of the bill and 3 not in favor.
So senators, the vote is carried and there's support for the bill. So
Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Hudson, you will.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I move that Rule 26 be suspended in respect of this bill.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. Then I move that the bill entitled the Bermuda Health Council Amendment Number 2, Act 2024 be now read a third time.
Is there any objection to the third reading? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the bill do now pass.
It has been moved that the bill do not pass. Is there any objection to that motion? No objection. The bill is passed. Thank you, Senator
Thank you, Madam
Ariana
President.
Hudson and senators. We will now move on with our agenda, our orders of the day, and that is the next order is consideration of the Bermuda Health Council Health Services Providers Licensing Regulations. And that's also in the name of Senator Ariana Hudson, the Junior Minister of Finance, spokesperson of Finance, sorry.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move that Standing Order 71-2 be suspended so that Senate may now proceed with consideration of the Bermuda Health Council Health Service Providers Licensing Regulations 2024. Madam President, I move that Senate do now take under consideration the Bermuda Health Council Health Service Providers Licensing Regulations 2024, proposed to be made by the Minister responsible for health after consultation with the Council in exercise of the power conferred by Section 15 of the Bermuda Health Council Act 2004.
Senator Ariana Hudson and all senators. We've been here all morning. It's now 25 past 11, and I'm putting to you that maybe we need to break for lunch until 2 o'clock. If that is, are you in agreement?
Madam President, I do ask that the how long is your day? It's long. I ask that the Senate now do adjourn for lunch, please.
Thank you. So we will adjourn for lunch and we will return at 2 p.m. Thank you.